Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're back for another spooky season special. This is the last of the spooky season specials. I was able to find one more trade. We're taking a look today at KILLADELPHIA by Rodney Barnes and Jason Sean Alexander. Don't know either of those. This is another newer book released by Image, started in 2019. I'm going to have to give you a bit of spoilers right off the bat. This is a vampire story. Sorry if you wanted the surprise. So this is another one I picked up when I was trying to get back into comics, and I think I was pretty much convinced by the name on this one, actually. I mean, KILLADELPHIA is a pretty good one. Lamb of God thought so, anyway. So yeah, bought that, read it, and didn't think of it again until I started making these videos for October, because this comic really didn't stick with me at all. It's yet another try at, just putting vampires in a modern-day context. We start off with our young detective, young detective here, who's investigating the death of his detective father. So the young guy's jurisdiction is in Baltimore. His dad is based out of Philadelphia. And we find out what the deal is in the first issue, where he was investigating some weird murders, which led him to a part of the town that was basically condemned. This is Hell Hall, which used to be like a ghetto. And when he goes to investigate, he gets jumped by a whole horde of vampires. They don't tell us that for most of the first issue, but we get the story via the son, Jimmy, finding his dad's journal and going through his notes on his last case. And the dad had figured out what the deal was and figured out what the source was, which is fucking ridiculous. Just to put it out there first, I don't mind spoiling it because they hint at it in the first issue and then they confirm it in the second. So the way the vampire plague starts in this one is John Adams, second president of the United States, after his term was up, went down to the Caribbean and caught vampire, him and his wife. And so they returned back to the States, basically lived out the rest of his natural lifespan, and then had himself entombed. And since then has been kind of working to try and do something that'll fix America. That's the plan. Because he's of the opinion that America is pretty broken. I think that's an opinion that's shared by a lot of people. And he's slowly building a vampire army, turning the disenfranchised. It's probably pretty easy to convince somebody to be a vampire if they've had a shitty life up till now. And like, hey, I can give you a whole bunch of power and make you immortal if you like. And in this case, that largely means infecting black people. And that seems to be a large part of the point of the story. I've seen articles describe this as sort of a metaphor for the disenfranchisement of black people in America. I gotta take their word for it a little bit. As a white non-American, it's not really aimed at me, so it's not speaking to me directly. And they kind of hint around the edges of that theme in this, but they don't say it outright, so it doesn't latch in my brain, So anyway, Jimmy discovers the vampire plot and discovers that his dad was caught up in it, and digs up his dad's grave to find that his dad is turned into a vampire. Like, that's the big sting at the end of issue 1. So that's interesting. That's a good way to end an issue with, at least. And they're going to have to team up to try and take down the vampire threat, which means taking down ex-President John Adams. Like I said, it's fucking ridiculous. But that does tie into the whole Americana thing and the other themes in the book. So, I guess it makes sense. I don't know. From an outsider's perspective, it just seems like, really, that's the way you're going. All right. So, yeah. That's basically what the first trade paperback is. Jimmy the detective and his vampire dad are going to team up to take down the second president of the United States and his vampire army and stop their plot of vampirizing the U.S., I believe is the plot. And it's fine. It's a decent vampire story. The goofiness of the whole John Adams thing, I don't know if it elevates it or anything. It doesn't feel like that, but it does feel like it sets it apart a little bit, at least. And it leaves the threat open at the end of this volume, at least, so that they continue the series. And the series is still going at this time. These days, it looks like the series has gotten even more ridiculous in that they seem to be crossing over into the general Image universe, because Spawn and Savage Dragon seem to guest star in the most recent issues. So whatever message they were trying to send in this one, like, to me, as somebody who hasn't read those issues, that just completely lets all the air out of the balloon. Maybe they can set it up in a way that's, I don't know, makes it seem justified or something. I kind of doubt it. It seems a little bit, again, from an outsider's perspective, like they couldn't think of what to do. And they're like, well, we have access to the Image universe. We're an Image book. We can go this way. But, Walking Dead was also an Image book. I don't think they ever did that shit. You figure Spawn probably would have survived the zombie apocalypse. He could have made a guest star appearance if he'd wanted to. So maybe it's not doing that great. I don't know. And they've got to do gimmicky shit to bump sales. There's a lot of different ways it could go. Not too many of them good, though, I gotta say. So the book itself, the writing is okay. It's vague, is a problem. In the first issue, I had to backtrack every once in a while to see who was talking, because it flips back and forth on the timeline between Jimmy and his dad. So his dad investigating his last case and Jimmy reading about his dad investigating his last case. I think the dad's name is James, which increases just, the difficulty in differentiating the two. And it's just not always entirely clear who's speaking. So there's that. It likes to speak in vagaries where it dances around issues without directly telling you what it's talking about, except for the John Adams stuff, which is pretty crystal clear. But like the plans of John Adams, it doesn't really say at any point. It seems like he just wants to turn everybody into vampires and then he'll win, which is dumb because then you're just a country full of vampires with no food. But whatever, maybe they had some way around that. We don't hear what it is. The actual plot line is fine. Takes care of the immediate threat, sets up future stuff, sets up a villain that's probably worse than John Adams after the fact. But the plot itself isn't super intricate, doesn't have the most amazing twists and turns, and I don't know, just feels kind of run-of-the-mill, really. The art is very good. Although it's not really to my tastes a lot of the time. It does in some spots seem to rely an awful lot on reference, so it gets some of that Tim Bradstreet problem I was talking about before, where there's sequences that are so obviously heavily referenced, it feels like they just dropped Photoshop filters over photos of some kind. And the often photocopied backgrounds don't help that. I'm not 100% sure they're photocopied, like obviously shit like this is. Some of them might just be lightboxed or dropped in Photoshop and then traced over, that kind of thing they do these days. And I'm not a fan of any of that. Again, more photocopies. There's a bunch of photocopies in this. I mean, luckily the photocopies fit in with the style, which is kind of a sketchy photorealism. But yeah, this kind of stuff I tend to lose interest in because there's no cartooning to it at all, I suppose. That's just reflecting my personal bias, though. When it does get away from the photorealism a little bit, I like it better. Much like Gideon Falls, although it doesn't do it as often as Gideon Falls does. So, didn't make as much of an impression. So overall, I mean, it's a good-looking book, just not to my taste, really. So yeah, that's it for KILLADELPHIA. It's fine, if not particularly memorable. Like I said, I don't know where it goes from here, so maybe it gets a little bit better, the storyline, it gets a bit more inventive, that'd be nice. But from what I saw, I was just kind of like, yeah, that was okay, and then completely forgot about it. Reading it again this time, I don't feel bad about forgetting it last time. So anyway, that is going to do it for KILLADELPHIA, and that's going to do it for the Spooky Season Specials. Thanks for watching these. I did get one more trade that might fit in, which I might just take a quick look at some point. I didn't want to rush it before the end of the month. I actually do want to, read it in detail and then give you an honest idea of what it looks like. So maybe I'll put that up at some point. These don't take too long to make. But yeah, for this one anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.